Hey everyone, Brendan Sander here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to an exciting episode where I'm going to ask the question, are CDs finally making a comeback? So I've been a music fan myself since around 1989. I've been collecting CDs since 1991, and I've watched both the rise and fall of the CD itself. Now, CD has always been my primary choice format of music. I've got 13,000 of them in my collection, so I might be a little bit biased in that regard. But in all, in the last 5 years, especially the time that I've been doing this channel here, I've really noticed that people have sort of started to change how they think about the CD. And that has led me to wanting to ask the question, are CDs finally making a comeback? So we're going to get into that here. I'm going to break it all down, discuss that with you guys, and you guys can weigh in the comments, and we'll do that in a bit. But if you are new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by turning on notifications, you'll never miss an episode and stay up to date on really cool things like this discussion topic here. Are CDs finally making a comeback? For those of us that are CD fanatics, we certainly want to champion that. We've been waiting for it, so it's something that is constantly on our mind. Now, for those of you that might not be CD fanatics or the vinyl fanatics, or maybe you're younger and you're just getting into it, I do want to cover a brief history of the CD because it's going to weigh in a bit on the overall discussion topic here. And so the fact that the CD hit the market back in 1982 when it was developed by a joint effort from Philips and Sony, and so the format itself went on to gain widespread popularity around the late 80s, early 90s, and around 1991 was the first time that it had surpassed both vinyl and cassettes in the marketplace. Jump ahead to 2000, and the CD sales accounted for 92% of all physical media that was for music at that time, because CDs were still, cassettes, vinyl, all that was still being made, although on a very small scale by comparison to the CD at that point. And in 2007, and I wasn't able to find a more current stat than this, over 2 billion CDs had been sold by 2007. Obviously, post that, things started to taper off a bit. And so the CD itself, widely regarded as the final dominant format of the album era itself, before MP3s came around, digital downloads, streaming, all of that sort of stuff really began to take over, and ultimately leading to the decline of the CD itself by the late 2000s into the early 2010s. And so vinyl has been on a rise now since 2016. So almost 10 years that vinyl has been making a major push and comeback. And in 2023, vinyl sold 43 million units, adding up to about $1.4 billion US dollars. And the CD itself, on the opposite side of that, sold 37 million units. So 43 million for vinyl, 37 million for CDs. So CDs selling less than vinyl. And the CD itself only amounting to 500,000 or 500 million, I should say, 500 million in sales. Now that's nothing to slough at, but it's about 1/3 of what vinyl's making. So you can understand why record industry types, labels, and a lot of artists only releasing on vinyl or streaming, not doing it on CD, because they have to sell 3 times as many to make the same amount of money. iTunes itself was released in 2001, so that popularized the digital music format. Now almost 25 years on, with nostalgia and everything starting to make a comeback on these sort of formats, is the CD itself making a comeback? And that's what we're here to discuss. So, most people would outright ask the question or say, isn't the CD format dead, right? And I went through briefly the historical aspect of it and gave you some stats and things on it like that. But Over the years, especially since the beginning decline of it, the CD itself has shown about a 20% drop in sales year after year when that decline began. And that's since the early 2010s. But used CDs, on the other hand, see, and I was talking about new with that, and I should preference that all of the stats and everything that I gave were based on new CDs and new vinyl and whatnot. It is very hard to quantify used sales and figures. So where I'm going with this is that in my various ventures out to record stores and discussions with record store owners, in particular Anthony Coviello at Sound Exchange in Wayne, New Jersey, and Mark at High Fidelity in Long Island, New York, and Amityville, New York. Those two people in particular, I've spent a lot of time discussing this with, and from both, I've continued to hear the same thing over the last few years, that for them, the used CD has become a big market, selling lots and lots of used CDs. And in the last year to half year, they've really seen an uptick in used CDs. And I think that that has to do with a lot of things, in that what we already pointed out, that the cost or the making of money from new CDs was about 1/3 of what a new vinyl cost was. And so you can buy 2 to 3 CDs for the price of 1 LP. And I think that is leading a lot of people to reevaluate the CD itself. What's kind of been funny about that is that Anthony Coviello at Sound Exchange, if you watch any of the Sound Exchange sessions that I film with him, he is a staunch LP supporter. He's actually 3 years younger than me. I myself am 49, so that would put him at 46 roughly, give or take. And you would think that he himself would also be a CD person coming from that era, but in fact, he holds vinyl to that nostalgic standard the way that I do with CDs, and yet he himself has gone out and bought a CD player. And that actually leads into the next point that I want to talk about here. He's done that because of the high prices of vinyl, that he himself has realized that in some cases he doesn't want to shell out for the vinyl copy, and he just wants it, so he'll buy it on CD. But on a different thing of that, there's been a lot of releases that have only come out on CD, or only the full amount of something is available on the CD. So Anthony, big fan of Whitesnake the way that I am, and I'm sure a lot of you guys out there, these box sets have only come out on CD. So these are, 6, 7, 8 CD box sets. I'm talking in general about all the Whitesnake ones that are like these, only available on CD. Anthony is a big fan of John Mellencamp, and when this came out, the box set version of it, the bonus material, the outtakes, the demos, that sort of stuff, only available on CD. So even though he could get a vinyl copy of the remix of the album itself in the box, there was no full LP edition of the box, and you would think that would only have been a 2 LP situation, but what they did is they put the 1 LP album and the 2 CD edition in the box together, so he had to buy the CD version in order to get the bonus content that was there. One of his favorite bands, Blondie, this box set here, not everything came out on the LP edition. There was a sort of selections in terms of the LP edition, and he had to buy multiple formats to get everything. So, that sort of thing we've been seeing more and more. I myself am a big T-Rex fan, and I picked up some of these box sets. This is the 1973, and it has 4 CDs from that era. And I picked this up for different reasons, but because it's a selections of, you could only get a single LP edition, a selections of, that is the equivalent to the 4 CD box set edition of this. So vinyl fans, yeah, this right here is $35, $40 for this. This right here is about $50. So it's not much more for 4 CDs, and in some cases, these are about the same cost. In fact, now that the price on these have dropped, this is about the same cost in terms of purchasing a 1 LP versus the 4 CD. And one other one that I just recently picked up that I, have seen a lot of this with. So this is, yes, Close to the Edge, a deluxe edition. It's got 4 CDs in here and 1 LP. So there is no 5 LP edition of this thing. You have to buy this version. You get the 1 LP Steven Wilson remix, but to get all the bonus content, the live show, the outtakes, the different versions of everything, you've got to buy essentially the CD edition to get it. So I just wanted to point out some of that stuff there, that there is this thing that has been going on for quite some time where CDs are essentially fleshing out LP releases, that those people who are fanatics about the LPs can't get everything. To me, that says that ultimately the LP format is not sustainable. Case in point to the most recent Grateful Dead box set release, that is a 60 CD box set. There is no LP edition of it. Obviously, to produce what is on each one of those CDs would probably take 2 LPs. So can you imagine the cost of a 120 LP box set? It would be astronomical. The 60 CD box set was $660 or $600, I can't remember, right around that price though, but triple that cost to $1,800, give or take, and it would probably be a lot more just in terms of packaging and everything else. So it doesn't seem that the LP is really sustainable for the music market when there is hunger and desire to get archival material and lots of it. And so with box sets fleshing out, sometimes those box sets only being available in CD format, I think that is saying that the CD format, if nothing else, is here to stay. But is it actually making a return? Is it actually coming back? And I think, yes, in terms of the public's consciousness, I think nostalgia alone, it started to make a return. We have things like the fact that it has now been, if it came out in 82, we're almost 45 years on from the introduction of the CD. I've lived through it the whole time, so it's not really a nostalgic thing for me because it has been my format. But for those where the CD came and went, and a lot of people think the CD completely disappeared, it never has. It just went by the wayside. It went underground, much the way hard rock, rock, metal went underground. That music has never gone away. None of these things have ever gone away. They just went from being the popular top tier format of music in the industry, whether it be the CD or a genre style of music, they went to the underground side of things. But the fact that it has been 45 years since its introduction means that at least 3 generations of music fans have come and gone through the CD era before its untimely demise in around 2007 and the advent or the takeover of the return of vinyl as the physical format as it's began growing. And so, couple major generations, Generation X, which I'm part of, I was born in 1976, so I forget the exact start, somewhere in the late 60s up through 75 was 1980, I should say, was Generation X, and then millennials taking over in 81 up through the mid 90s, give or take, and even to some extent the generation that follows it. But mostly Gen X and millennials would have that nostalgic feeling for the CD itself. Now, think about this. As the Gen X generation is going through their parents, the baby boomers stuff, and they're passing on, and we're finding their old vinyl collections and selling those off to record stores, which has helped create the boom in vinyl. At a certain point, us Gen Xers and the older ones that are the Gen Xers will be passing away, and the next 10, 15, 20 years, or however long it might be. Hopefully, I'm a 49, I'm hoping to live to 100. So I want to think that I've got 51 years left of my life. But regardless, CDs are going to start being found by our children, and they will be in turn selling those off to the record stores, creating a boom in the CD world as well, the same way that vinyl did that. And children who find their parents' old music collections always dig through that stuff and get turned on to things. And the same way that myself went through my parents' music collection, finding LPs and getting turned on to them when cassettes and CDs were the dominant format, there was plenty of LPs that never got pressed to CD, and therefore I went out and bought LP. And you can see I do have a 400 plus LP collection for just that reason. So the same way there's tons and tons of stuff on CD that has never been pressed to vinyl because it went out of fashion and out of style. And likewise, tons and tons of this stuff, both LP and CD, is not available to stream. And a lot of the younger kids that only know the streaming format are finding out that there is so much more music out there in the world from their favorite artists that they thought was only what the artist released was only available, and in turn there's actually other stuff. And one of those things being like this, the original Rat LP, EP from 1983 on Time Coast, later picked up and released by Atlantic Records, but the 6-track EP itself not available out there in the world. You can get it on LP, you can get it on CD, probably can even find it on cassette, I think, but it's not available new, it's not available to stream, and there is a lot of stuff out there that's like that, not just something small and minor in that regard. There's tons of stuff that goes in and out of licensing agreements with streaming, and if you only ever stream, you don't really have access to the full amount of an artist's catalog. Now, I will flip that real quick just to say that in the world of streaming, they have found that they can put out a lot more stuff without all the marketing hype, without all the pressing of CD, booklet format, LP, whatever, to get that stuff out there. And so a lot of artists are releasing huge catalogs worth of live material. Bruce Springsteen currently doing that, and Pearl Jam and just numbers of different artists are dropping live archival releases that are only available to stream. And so to the same degree, those of us that are CD fanatics and LP fanatics, don't really have full access to everything if we're not also streaming. So at least for me, I do have access to a streaming account. I have Apple Music, and I do listen to that during my commutes to and from work. When I am at home, though, I do prefer the CD format, but there is a number of things that are only available on LP, and so I do pick those up, and ultimately finding that I pretty much need a 3-format system where I have CD, LP, and I do stream in order to cover everything that I want from my favorite artists. Now, lots and lots of music fans and lots of average, everyday music listeners don't need all of that. Most of them are gonna be okay with just streaming. But if you want those box sets, and again, not all of the content that are on these box sets is getting uploaded to streaming. So again, if you want that full amount of stuff from your favorite artists, you may in fact have to have a multi-format system, and or at least focusing somewhat on the CD itself. And so switching over to the cost of things, I talked about how basically LPs are about 3 times the cost of CDs. Not always, but CDs have started to go up for a very long time, for a good maybe almost 20 years. CDs from about the mid to late 90s up through, I would say, at least 2015, maybe even 2020. In that time frame, so a solid 20, if not longer, period of time, you could get CDs for $10 to $12, at least new releases when they came out. The average cost of the CD at its peak was $18.99, but that kind of died off around the early 2000s, and that was with the advent of streaming, and so CDs had to become more cost effective and they began to go down in price. But whereas pretty much every CD that was coming out 5 years back was around $10 to $12, I'm rarely seeing that now. I'm actually seeing them on average $15, and some of the big major artists $18, and on up to smaller artists that maybe can't make as much, so that they have to sell at a higher price in order to recoup the cost. CDs, new CDs, I'm seeing pretty regularly $24. That has become a big bummer because it's far more than I'm used to paying. It's getting harder for me to swallow. But I'd like to think that the cost of that, the rise in that, is also showing the value of the CD. That the industry is realizing that, like an LP that sells for, or was 3 times, instead of 10 to 12, selling for 30 to 35, well, music is music and physical is physical, and we should be selling the CD for a higher price too. And I do think that at a higher price, it will make the value of something far higher and therefore shine a brighter light on it. If CDs started pulling in the price of what LPs do, I think more releases would come out on CD, and we would see record labels returning to it. And I think there is a shift in that to some degree. First and foremost, to the box set, where we're seeing 3 to 4 CD box sets cost upwards of $150. We have the new Bruce Springsteen box set, a 7 CD box set that at first came out at $300, now selling for $260 on Amazon. So I think that the industry is starting to realize the worth of these things. And I will just quickly throw it out there so that I don't get a bunch of this in the comments. I do know that the Metallica 15 CD box set is selling for like $175 or something around that price range. There's a whole separate segment to be had on that, because the Springsteen is 7 CDs worth of all new unreleased material, whereas the Metallica box is full of archival live shows and multiple different demos, rehearsals, and different masterings. So it does not have any new unreleased material on it the way that Springsteen's does. And I do think that that has something to do with the price shift between a 175 15 CD versus a 7 CD 260 box set. But anyways, let's wrap this thing up here and start talking about the final aspect of it, where I think that they are nostalgic, and kids today, as they're finding their parents' collections that are on CD, will pull those out, and it will be the shift from streaming to CD as opposed to streaming back to LP that made the boom in the LP the way that it did. And we're seeing lots of artists return to the format of the jewel case, right? So the original format of the jewel case, that Aerosmith, that Rat that came out that way, and a lot of artists, classic artists, certainly like Deep Purple, returning to it. But even newer artists, I'm seeing that artists are announcing that it will be in a jewel case edition. The latest Taylor Swift releases, Sabrina Carpenter, and a number of other artists are promoting jewel case edition. And that isn't for their young fans per se, as much as it is to the nostalgic aspect of what it is. And so, wow, this jewel case thing, those kids are only used to the cardboard format of something, the digipack format, which has the hard plastic part that is in it. This one just being the cardboard edition. And yes, Doobie Brothers, 53 years on, or longer. I think they formed in 70, maybe 55 years, putting out in the cardboard format and not the jewel case edition. So it goes both ways. But you have bands like Garbage doing very cool packagings like these. And yes, I'm sure that is probably done on the LP edition too, or you would think. But a lot of cool things like that that could be done with the CD itself. And I think as the younger generations find it and get into it, that thing of nostalgia about when and where it came from is going to make a big return to the CD format. And so I do think we are headed towards a return in the CD format. And if nothing else, I think it will be a stabilization of it, where as opposed to it being a declining, it will sit in tandem with LPs. It may never fully bring in the money that LPs do, but I also think that the LP market is starting to taper off and the CD is starting to come back, and we may find a stabilization. And that might end up being a whole other topic down the road in here, where I think that the two dominant formats will ultimately become the CD and LP. And I think that a lot of people are starting to remember what it was about the CD itself that made it so popular back in the day. So first and foremost, the size. They're smaller, they store, you can store more on it. You're only getting about 45 minutes worth of music on a single LP, whereas you can get up to 80 minutes, 85 even, I think, on a CD itself. The ease of use, the operation of just doing this and popping that out, as opposed to the whole way that you've got to slide out, don't touch the LP, but how do you grab it? Whereas this allowed for the pop of only touching the sides and the single hand use like that. And ultimately the inexpensiveness of a CD, especially in the used market of things. So I think all of that with nostalgia has made the CD finally start making a return and a comeback. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on the subject, and I'm certainly interested in your thoughts on everything. Let me know your experiences with CDs in recent years. Do you think it's making a comeback? Do you think it'll ever make a comeback? Do you think it's just going to stabilize? Or do you think LPs will continue to have the dominant foothold? Either way, weigh in, let me know, and we'll have a great conversation and discussion on it. All right, everyone. Take care, and whichever format you like, CDs, LPs, cassettes even, because some artists like Ghost, releasing new album on cassette, even going back to VHS. So we've got all kinds of different formats happening, but enjoy your music however it is that you like to listen to it, including streaming. It's all good. Just be a music fan.